Live from Los Angeles to stations up and down the West Coast and nationwide on iHeart Radio. This is KLEAN Radio, and it starts right now.
How long is that opening?
I think it's the longest on Earth.
Have you ever heard an opening that long?
Yes, I have,
right.
but not lately.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Pat O'Brien here with Andrew Spanswick. Welcome to KLEAN Radio. And we're also at KLEANradio.com. And let me run down where we are. We're everywhere. The show calling number is like calling a New York taxi.
Except nobody does that.
But nobody does that. But call it anyway, 800-222-5222. KLEANradio.com, Facebook.com/KLEANradio, at KLEAN Radio on Twitter. And I'm POB Pat O'Brien, and Andrew is KLEAN CEO.
Yeah,
like
which you don't seem to like for some reason.
I think it's lame. I
think it's lame.
Andrew
Should
Spanswick.
you like put a bird in there or something, or make it interesting?
How about Andrew Spanswick?
Yeah, but nobody knows how to spell Spanswick.
They will if you keep it up there.
I guess so.
Welcome to our show tonight, and Andrew. Here we are, coming almost to the end of January. Big football games today, and it brings up a good point. We have a great guest tonight, by the way, and we'll get to him in a second. But it brings up a great point because this is the time of year when people who are sports fans, they don't give up drinking on these weekends, right? I mean, not a lot of people get sober during the NFC, AFC championship.
Why would they?
Well, just football in general, I think is interesting. They've spread it out through the whole week, so now you can just drink and watch football all week. So some people, now actually they have to take a break and wait for the playoff game.
Yeah. Well, the Super Bowl's in 2 weeks. We have an iconic voice in the studio tonight. We also have Shadoe Stevens.
But I want to tell you.
Hey, I'm sorry.
Take my wife.
Sorry about that. Shadoe Stevens is one of the most iconic radio voices in TV and really personalities ever, in my regard. I mean, I think there was about 5 great people who made a big impact in radio. I'm not one of them. Dick Biondi. Were you a Dick Biondi fan?
I grew up with Dick Biondi.
Yeah, well, Shadoe and I are both from the Dakotas. He's from North Dakota. I'm from South Dakota.
So you listen to WLS.
WLS,
so you guys are
Chicago.
Related.
And KOMA in Oklahoma City.
KOMA, Oklahoma City. Wow. And then the one in Birmingham,
Radio
too.
guys.
I know, right?
But at night, if you're out there in South Dakota, not much going on. So WLS was a 50,000-watt station, I believe.
Yeah.
And Biondi was still alive, by the way.
Yeah.
He's still around.
I know, he was terrific.
And KOMA was just iconic. Anyway, Shadoe's got a great story. It's a great success story. And he's one of these guys that just continues to get successful. Shadoe, how are you?
I'm excellent and getting better. Start with excellent, breathe in better.
So let's start with your story. And, you're this iconic disc jockey. And is disc jockey still the right?
I don't know. I think they all would prefer you to say, I'm radio personality.
Yeah, I know.
You're actually a digital file player.
Yeah, let's go, DJ. You ran into some problems with alcohol and drugs.
Well, I don't have the story that a lot of people have because I grew up in a Norman Rockwell childhood. My father and mother didn't drink or smoke or use drugs or curse or fight in front of the kids. And they owned toy stores and clothing stores and go-kart tracks and fireworks stands on the 4th of July. And no one in my family, I'm the oldest of 5 kids, no one has this problem but me. So I grew up with, my dad would say, what do you want to drink for? It makes you loud and stupid. He went through World War II without drinking. And so I believed that until I was a senior in high school and drank to celebrate with a few friends and then threw up for hours. And I thought, it's like my dad said, I don't get this. However, in my 5th year of college, which we were talking about earlier, guy says, you got to try some herb. Oh, man, it's like a plant. It's not like it leads to heroin.
Which is a plant.
Yeah. And it seemed like a good idea. So they had this big hookah in the middle of the floor and blacklight posters, and I inhaled on the hookah, and it went blip, 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 and the ceiling opened up, and the sky was within, and I was moving with the music on the left and the right, and I knew it was experiential.
Yeah. But just out of nowhere, right? Just curiosity?
Well, it was like, I didn't know. I didn't have any concept of an altered state of consciousness. I was clearly my dad's kid. And suddenly it was like an awareness opener. So for me, it was a gateway because that night I bought my first ounce. Within a month, I bought my first pound. Within the first year, I took acid. Then I took it every weekend. And then it was seeing, I was out here in Los Angeles and had a job of some consequence. And a one-armed man who worked for me said, you've got a lot of responsibilities. You should see my doctor, Dr. Lax. And Dr. Lax weighed 350 pounds. He had an office at La Cienega and Wilshire. And I would see him, after I'd seen him for a few months, he would write his prescriptions on his stomach. So you had Dexedrine last month. How about Black Beauties?
Right.
Good. Dr. Lax, things have been going really well. I've been reading a lot down. Sometimes I have to stay through, keep up and read going through the night and have to. And he goes, I'm having a little trouble sleeping. Well, maybe you had Quaaludes last month. How about Tuinol? Excellent, Dr. Lax. And so I saw him for many years, and then I had this peak acid experience, outer body experience, and I thought, I've got to find my way back here without drugs. So I learned, I started studying quantum physics and comparative religion. And
what was that experience? What was the peak experience? Yeah.
It was sitting on near the ocean in Big Sur and closing my eyes, and a roar came from within. And in that roar that I heard in my head, I saw seemingly thousands of gods in the heavens, all moving like Hindu gods. And I was raised Presbyterian and Christian Science, so I have no concept of this whatsoever. And I saw this, and it was so real and so alive that I thought, I've got to find my way back here without drugs. So I started learning about these things, and meditation seemed like a good idea. So I stopped everything. I stopped drinking, I stopped using drugs, and I meditated. And a year went by, and my life got better. And a guy came into my studio. I had a production company in Hollywood. And he laid down an ounce of Peruvian flake.
Cocaine.
He said, yes. He said, it's just for the work. Have as little or as much as you want. And it was a long night. So I started thinking, I have been really good. Clearly, I can pick it up or put it down anytime I want.
Yeah.
And, what would a little needle line hurt? So I did 2 because you have 2 nostrils, and I did
for a while anyway.
2 more. Yeah, exactly, until they connect, and then a couple more, and then we worked through the night and the next day, and within a week I bought my own ounce, and then I built it into my budgets, and that's where things took a dreadful turn for the worse. That's where it got dark. And they talk about...
That's where you start losing money, houses, family. By the way, I did acid with Timothy Leary, and all we ever saw was the DEA, so we didn't get the God.
You didn't get the God. Yeah.
But
you were all
you have to work through paranoia.
So you move.
Isn't paranoia a happy little word? It sounds like something you can get rid of with a little salve on your back. Yeah, I got a little paranoia back there.
Yeah.
Put it on there.
I want to get Andrew's take on this path, but because it's an unusual path. I'm surprised. The biggest thing that surprised you weren't a Lutheran.
No. I'm a Norwegian Presbyterian.
Wow. Well, I'm an Irish
You're
Lutheran.
a Lutheran, Irish Catholic.
No, I'm an
Irish
Lutheran.
Okay.
There are limited options in the Dakotas.
Apparently not. Apparently not. So
there wasn't a lot of Buddhism or Hinduism.
But let's go back because and Andrew he pointed out. I guess he's here. We can say Shadoe pointed out.
Yeah, we have to talk like he's actually here.
No, I mean, pointing out that nobody in his family had it. I think that's where everybody goes right away when you say you had a problem, is that, was it in your family?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think that there has to be a history of addiction in your family for you to be an addict, and that's sort of stereotypically that most people that are addicts have addicts in their family. Often there are addicts in your family, you just don't know about it because through socialization and like how they were raised, they were told never to drink or use drugs, probably because there was a bad addict a few generations back. So you may not have known
Bill or something.
Yeah, you may not known of where genetically there might have been a track for you still to become an addict. But the fact that you were such like a teetotaler as a metaphor, that everything was sort of banned and you were never supposed to do anything. That's actually some of the situations that people get into the worst situation.
Well,
because they have no idea of what they're dealing with and they have no information about it. It's much better now. I mean, there's so much more information just out there on the internet.
Yeah, it's a lot different.
Yeah, but then you just didn't have a clue and you had no idea what these things really were.
By the way, reach us on @KLEAN Radio or Facebook.com/KLEAN Radio. Could it be regional? Because we both came from the same background. Of course, everybody in my family
Anywhere
are
where it's
alcoholics.
cold, you got a lot of people sitting inside drinking.
It's so exciting to have
Good reasons
something.
to drink. You know, it's ugly out there.
It's so exciting to have something new. I mean, we were sharing before the show with each other, and Shadoe and I have known each other for years. We both listen to the same radio station at night, WLS in Chicago and KLMA in Oklahoma City, because we're isolated out there. So I remember the first time I was able to get hard liquor, or what did I have? Oh, hash. Able to get hash. That was my gateway drug.
Right.
There's nothing better than this, because I'd
get
never
it.
seen it before, right?
Well, but I went to the University of North Dakota first because I didn't dare come to California, and there I got into radio and worked away and was part of a fraternity. So we drank at parties, but it never occurred to me to drink any other time. I didn't like alcohol, and but I kept some grass in my room for a guy from California, so that he wouldn't get busted. And it never occurred to me to try it. It's like, ew. It's like, no, why would you do that? But it wasn't until I actually tried it, went, oh, well, now I see. It's experiential.
See, there's another part of this piece of this. Shadoe Stevens is our guest tonight. People always ask me, where'd you get that voice? Do they say to you, was it whiskey and cigarettes? They always say that to me.
Yeah, right.
I said, no, my father's voice. Where were we on your gateway drug? Marijuana is not exactly a gateway drug, but a different feeling is a gateway.
Well, it's a gateway drug for hallucinogens in a way. It can be that, but I think the primary gateway drugs, like I've said, are alcohol and tobacco. But because they're legalized now, especially with marijuana becoming legalized now, they're all sort of getting lumped into the same boat. But we also know that those alcohol and tobacco are the most damaging drugs out there in terms of social costs and deaths and so on, accidents. But marijuana is quickly becoming one of those now that is becoming recreational and legal.
You collapsed in your studio, right? Didn't you go into a seizure?
What I had...
Is that true? Or no,
I had a panic attack.
Right.
And, it's like when you have an bad acid trip, it's the acid. And you're going to have to
By the way,
ride it
we
out.
laugh about this now. It's not really that funny.
You got 8 hours. You got to hang on there.
Right.
Better find somebody funny to hang out with.
Or you can try and get somebody and say, I need something to take off the edge. I'm like freaking out. Yeah. However, if you have a panic attack, you're either going to die or you're going to be in a mental hospital for the rest of your life. And there aren't any other two options. So you're on the floor, breathing into a paper bag in panic and terror, going, oh, God, help me. Oh, God. And so my friends take me to Dr. Lax, who's horrified that I would come to see him at a time like this.
Because he gave you the panic attack.
Exactly. And so he cut me off.
Right.
So my next step was to turn to the streets, and crystal meth seemed like a good idea.
Sure.
Wow.
Cheap, kept you going. Sometimes you could work through the night, and the next day, and the next night, and the next day.
What year was that?
Next night. It was in the...
70s, right?
It was in the 70s,
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, because it was later that I got into... cocaine and crystal meth, and
we had the exact same path.
And alcohol.
You're lucky to be alive, man.
Oh, yeah. No, listen.
I hope you're on your knees every morning praying.
Yeah. Well, I told you I meditate 2 hours a day. So, yeah, I'm in a constant state of surrender and reaching for something higher.
Did you relapse ever?
No. The one great thing. Well, I had been using. I'd been using into convulsions on a regular basis.
Jeez.
And having seizures on the floor and my head cracking on the floor, and eyes rolled back and tongue out, and coming to thinking, well, that was a good hit. I should take a breather and not do any for a while. And then I saw my doctor, a different doctor, who gave me a physical, and here's what he said. He said, if you're lucky, you're going to die. I don't think you're going to be that lucky. I think you're going to have a heart attack or a stroke any minute. You're a time bomb. You've got so many toxins. Your cholesterol is high. Your blood pressure is high. Any minute you're going to have a heart attack or a stroke, and you're going to lose the ability to talk or walk, or something awful is going to happen that's worse than death. And suggested that I go into a 12-step program. And that wasn't for me because I knew I was bad, but I'm clearly not that bad. And I didn't stop, and I didn't stop until I had an overdose in my studio.
Was that a K-Rock, or
many
where was
months
that?
later. No, this is after K-Rock.
This
is during the first half of the Federated campaign. I'm doing all these television commercials, and they're wildly successful, and it's really funny, but they were getting darker and weirder as I was falling apart. And And then I have this overdose, and my parents find out, and they suggest, maybe you should get some help.
Do you find that, by the way, we've got all that stuff posted on our website, which is KLEANradio.com, right?
And CleanCenter.com.
And Facebook. All right, I hear you.
We're all
Facebook
over the place.
And Twitter.
Special significance to K and Clean?
Could you get the C?
Procter & Gamble had the C.
I see.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thanks for
you
asking. Is it weird that nobody ever came up to you and said, Shadoe, you got a problem? Towards the end, you just said, but I mean, along the way. Is that normal, Andrew? For
I
people
think
like us?
a lot of people have selective hearing.
People with power? I mean,
I mean, when you're deep in addiction, people are telling you all the time that you have a problem, but you come up with excuses why it's something else and not the drugs or the alcohol.
It's just too much work.
Yeah.
It's too much work. And I just used it for work. It was my
right. That's your rationalization.
Yeah.
Big
take
night
the time
ahead.
off. You have to take off on the weekend. But then, of course, the weekend continued because I kept working through the weekend. And
after you got sober, did you ever think you could be creative again?
no, I didn't think I could. When
Or
I
work-
reached the
work
point
without
where I
using.
was going into the hospital, when I was going into rehab, I thought, this is the worst day of my life. I'm never going to be creative again. I'm never going to laugh again. I'm not going to be an artist. I'm just going to be, a mental case. I'm going into a mental hospital. That's really what I thought until I talked to the counselor who was admitting, and we talked for about 2 hours. And he finally said, look, this is not like a mental hospital. We don't lock you in. But maybe you should just give it a day and see if you find out something. Clearly, things aren't going really well the way you're doing it now. Maybe there's, an option.
Well, that's one of the things. By the way, our 24/7 hotlines, if you have a problem or think you do, is 888-601-6040, 888-601-6040. How many times have you heard that? My life's over if I have to go to rehab.
There's a whole different variety of different sort of fears people have about rehab. One of them is that they fear that they're going to lose what they have, although they've already lost it anyway. And then there's this weird fear that they're coming in. What do we have, like chimes now?
The time is up. You've talked long enough.
Yeah, right. I talk too much. Anyway, so so you have some people you have other people that are manipulated to go in, and so they have a fear that that they're not going to succeed and their family's going to abandon them. And then you have other people who just really fear that they're going to die, and they know that they're sick. So sometimes you can get any of those people to succeed in treatment. But generally, the closer to their actual realization that what they're doing is killing them, and on some level it's a suicidal type of behavior, and it's very self-destructive, it isn't really until they reach that part that they start to really get insight.
And that's why we say end the stigma. And there always has been. You had it, you admit, and I had it as well. That, oh, my God, rehab, me? I'm Pat O'Brien. I don't belong in rehab. You know that deal.
I was so humiliated. I was so embarrassed from this family that didn't drink or use drugs or fight. And it's like, my God, what's wrong with me?
Shadoe's in rehab.
Did you see that?
But I mean, as it turns out, and Shadoe and I are here to tell you, and so is Andrew, that's probably the greatest thing that can happen to you if you're...
Yeah, and I think I think that people are starting to recognize that rehabs are. I think in some ways we actually have the opposite problem where they see celebrities going into rehab to supposedly get out of some problem that's not related to addiction.
That's what they thought about me.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you get this weird thing where the truth never really comes out because the person that's a celebrity doesn't want to tell the real story to everybody because it's personal to them, and then the tabloids end up telling the story that they want to tell.
Their version.
That's exactly what happened to me. I just had a friend get in trouble yesterday who's a celebrity, and I said, look, don't do anything. Just apologize, advance, the 3 A's. Apologize, admit, and advance. There's no other way to do it now with the internet and everything, right?
Yeah,
and with DJs who go on the air every Monday and read page 6 on the air. I hate that.
Well, it is. Cynicism has become the mark of intellectual superiority. All these guys are so certain that they're smarter, brighter, and cooler than everybody else.
Hey, what happened to Pat O'Brien?
Strengthens the ego by making fun, or complaining.
Yeah.
But you would think that would change too. You and I see enough of our colleagues in meetings and stuff, recovery, and you'd think that message would get passed along. It's no longer cool to say he's a drunk or he's a crackhead or a coke whore or whatever.
It's true. Well, they're glib. They're caught up in being witty.
There's also that idea that they're using and they can handle it. And these people,
exactly.
The implication is that, right, these poor, sad people that can't do drugs like we're doing and still get up in the morning and make fun of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Shadoe Stevens is our guest. But North Dakota was not officially a state until 2011.
What?
Yeah.
How can that
look
be?
It up. There was a mistake in the state constitution.
Really?
They found out about it in 2011. I thought you guys were a little backward up there, but
yeah. Well, the North Dakota song. When I was growing up, they had a contest to come up with a state song that everybody would. And the winner went like this: "You oughta go to North Dakota, see the cattle and the wheat, the folks that can't be beat."
I remember this. I made up a song when I was in high school called a country song, "If You Don't Leave Me, I'll Find Somebody Who Will." Anyway, you're listening, which is a perfect addiction song. Here we are having a good time on a Sunday night. I know if you're one of the 3 people not watching football, we're glad you're with us, but you can always tell your friends that we're on KLEANradio.com. You get the whole show. Andrew, what about this whole thing of being creative again? Because we find it all over the place. Musicians and people that have gone into recovery from heroin addiction and stuff, and I know, you and I can both name 100 people who are afraid to go back on stage.
I think a lot of the initial burst of creativity that comes from drug is as one, just seeing a different perspective than you do when you're straight. And you mentioned that, and that's kind of alluring. Also, drugs tend to be disinhibiting. So for people that suffer from fear and anxiety prior to performing, it gives them a way to try and transition through that period. But as far as actually creating real original work and performing, once you've mastered a craft and put the 10,000 hours, as they say, you need into doing it, you're actually impaired by these drugs at that point, and it stops you from actually being what you're capable of being.
Yeah, well, it usually comes from, even the words inspiration and enthusiasm, to be wrapped in ecstasy, possessed by God, enthusiasm, or to inhale spirit, immersed in God. It's all God-based. It's all like connecting to spirit that's beyond the body.
Right. The blood of Christ is wine. There's a lot of weird stuff there. So.
But if you had to put a meter on your talents, they're better now, obviously, right? Or just you can see it better?
There's not any comparison. None. I had giddy inspiration, enthusiasm, that was quickly diminishing, as you use. Because the weird thing is that with drugs, no matter how insane your life is, if your body is crawling with 1 million invisible bugs, which mine was, my solution was always, it'll get better if I just do a little more. That's insane.
Yeah. Cocaine makes me, what's the line? A line of cocaine makes me a new man. Unfortunately, a new man wants another line of cocaine.
Yeah, well, also, then you hear the outside the door. You hear it just outside the window. And you end up, like me, putting sheets and quilts over the windows and the doors and carrying guns because you can never be too careful. And I'm ready for anything that might happen.
And that's where scary things happen.
It's very, very scary to not know what's real.
Yeah.
Is there somebody out there, or is it not?
Yeah, I don't think most people understand that paranoia is really believing something that's made up.
Yeah, and you're not sure.
Yeah,
it could be there. It could be there. It could be there. I don't know.
Voices in your head. You know what I say? You know who puts those voices there? You do.
You do.
One guy who never thought he'd play again or have any creativity was Dallas Taylor from Crosby, Stills, Nash & Taylor. And he played with Neil Young, drummer, played with Manassas, Stephen Stills, Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
A great guy.
Great Dallas Taylor. Died this morning at 2:48 a.m. after suffering for years. He got me into rehab 10 years ago. Got me into the program, I mean. And, Dallas, I hope you look after me while you're up there. We'll be back in a minute.
Are you addicted to drugs or alcohol, but unable to commit to an inpatient rehab stay? Introducing KLEAN Treatment Center's Outpatient Treatment. This drug and alcohol treatment program is designed specifically for the working professional. Don't let your commitments of running a business, taking care of a child, or maintaining your college classes get in the way of your recovery from addiction. With daytime, evening, or individualized programs, KLEAN's Outpatient Treatment will fit your life. Call now for a free screening. Professional guidance is standing by.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pat O'Brien. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for joining the KLEAN Radio channel. Be sure to subscribe and get weekly episodes and clips. And comment. Like or dislike, whatever. Be nice. We respond to everything.
Now back to Los Angeles. This is KLEAN Radio.
Thank you, Rand DeWitt. His New England Patriots are beating up on the Colts, right? Or Indianapolis. I can't get used to Colts, Indianapolis. Pat O'Brien along with Andrew Spanswick. Shadoe Stevens is our guest tonight. He's a gem of recovery, a beacon of recovery, actually. And I love him. I love seeing you around town, and I just love having you here.
I feel the same way about you.
Thank you, sir. And Andrew, we do love you too.
Well, you know, I never go out on the town, so you know.
Yeah. Andrew's wearing a T-shirt tonight that says "Bikini Kill."
Yeah,
I like that.
Great
taste.
band.
Yeah, and 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah.
Well, he's a 9 Inch Nails guy.
Love them.
Buddy Totten, whose favorite band was what, the Dave Clark Five?
Sure.
Freddie and the Dreamers.
Sprung Monkey. Buddy's here with our social media director. Hello, buddy. How are you?
Good. How are you, man?
What do you got tonight?
All right. So this is what people are posting on Facebook.com/KLEAN Radio and Twitter.com/KLEAN Radio. And so our section of Ask Pat. Jimmy asked, when was the first time you were confronted about your drinking and using, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, it was when Page 6 called me. Actually, the first big confrontation was when I Shadow was my bottom. You know, when I made a stupid voicemail 10 years ago. And the first I heard about it was I was in a 3-day blackout. Can't remember making it, but I woke up with everybody from Les Moonves down at the foot of my bed saying, "You got a problem." That's the first I heard of it. And then when they sent me to rehab, I'm not a celebrity, but I didn't realize that I was even remotely popular until the helicopters flew over. So that was kind of the first.
Wow.
But no one ever.
When you guys were blacking out, like for you, was it something that you realized was a problem? Like, did you not? You would black out and you would just think that was normal drinking. Yeah, next time you'll just stop.
No, you got to.
No, the worst feeling. Yeah, the worst feeling is waking up and what did I do last night? But after this thing was a 3-day. Yeah,
it's terrifying.
And that happened to me in Paris. Buddy, we'll get to you in a second.
Sure, no problem.
It happened to me in Paris. I woke up and somebody said, "Hey, I had a great time last night." And I'm like, "Really? What?" He said, "Oh, you were great.
Yeah, right.
All over town. You were at the piano bar." And I said, "What was I playing?" He said, New York, New York." I said, "I don't know that song." What else you got, buddy?
All right. Well, this is a pretty heavy one. Adriana says, Pat, I'm 23 and I've been addicted to pills and booze since I was 17. I want to get help, but my parents are very conservative and will disown me if they find out. What should I do? I'm ashamed of what I've become.
Well, I'm going to let Shadow
address
Shadow's
that,
story, and I'm going to let Andrew do that. But you never be ashamed of admitting a problem, for one thing. But Shadow, you had a very similar story.
My parents found out about it after I had an overdose. So,
and your parents are very conservative.
Yeah, and very conservative. I mean, they had no concept of drugs and alcohol abuse. I learned nothing. I knew nothing about it. So what ended up happening was they were horrified.
What did they think caused it? Like,
they didn't know. They were just like, we had no idea. We thought that things were a little strange, like maybe you were working too hard.
What would you say to Adriana about her parents being ashamed? Or
yeah, I mean, for everybody it's different, but the sooner if you realize you have a problem, it's not going to get better. So, the sooner you actually confront it and deal with it. And the reality is that people are actually very forgiving. And if you think that people don't know you have a problem, you're really the one that's fooling yourself, because everybody knows on some level you have some sort of problem. Yeah. Whether they think it's an eating disorder or whether they think it's that you're smoking crack in the bathroom, they don't know, but they're trying to figure it out.
It always gets worse.
And it gets worse, right? So the sooner if you're still in control enough to be contemplating how to deal with, addressing it instead of it addressing you and your family addressing you, then that's the time to really think about it and own the problem and step out. And nobody's going to, even if somebody's angry at you at first, that's just their initial reaction of their own fear about what's going on. It's not the real reaction of how they really feel about the person. It's how they feel about the behavior and the shame and the fear of like what's happening to my daughter. So, if a lot of that is also to get the family into therapy too with you, go to the family treatment at the rehab, or, let the family learn about addiction and experience what they need to know so that they can feel safe and comfortable again with their own.
Adriana, you've been struck by some higher power, because at 23, she's thinking about it and realizes she has a problem. When I was 23.
Yeah, oblivion.
Yeah, I didn't care.
Me too.
I said, I'll wait till I'm
Yeah, I mean, I
was just starting.
I mean, it's amazing.
It's got to get better.
Shadoe, that you were doing so much meth, because that's a drug that normally takes people out pretty quickly. I mean, how long were you doing meth for? I mean,
well, I did it on and off because I didn't, you couldn't always get it.
Right.
And then meth is really edgy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, to say the
that's
least.
one way of putting it.
you get you can be very uncomfortable. So you need other things to take off the edge.
Sure.
You want the energy, but cocaine was a little more, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, I
more
mean,
tolerable.
it's. I mean, people would brag to me in rehab when I first was starting rehab. So I didn't realize people did this, but because I never did meth and I never did crack.
Right.
But people would tell me that they would get crack to come down from the coke.
Oh, sure.
And I was
from the
I
meth.
was like, oh
Yeah,
my
of
God,
course.
I had no idea it was that bad.
I'd say if you smoke it, you breathe better.
Yeah.
By the way, if you're like Adriana, you can call 888-601-6040. That's our Clean Center hotline, 24/7, right, Andrew?
Yep.
Buddy, one more?
Yes. Okay. Wayne says, I've been sober for 8 months and I'm starting to make amends to the people I've harmed in my addiction. What was your experience like making amends?
I didn't like it. I mean, I'm one of those self-centered people still, and it wasn't a lot of fun. I got mad at the people who wouldn't accept the amends. That was disturbing. But to be honest, to be totally honest, I didn't. I got to make my amends to everybody on the 1 hour Dr. Phil special. So I kind of was hoping that would cover everything. Did you have to do
And
that,
at the end of
Shadoe?
that, Dr. Phil owed you an amends, but he didn't
Exactly,
get it.
for being an idiot.
Yeah, right.
Dr. Phil owes a lot of people amends. No, I actually had a different experience. Every single person I went to with just unbearable shame and said, look, I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic, and I know what I did. Here's what I did, and I want you to know that I know. I want you to know I'm sorry. I want to make it up to you somehow. Here's what happened. And every time I did it, they said, wow, I am so proud of you.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And in fact, it took me 25 years to find my last guy that I'd make amends to. I couldn't find him anywhere. And I thought that I'd sent money to him in my first year of sobriety. I did my stuff and trying to make amends. And I sent a check to a university in Philadelphia. It was cashed, but it was never acknowledged. And then I couldn't find him. And then years went by and years went by. So 25 years later, I find him and I actually have a talk with him. And I say, here's what happened. Here's what I did. I sent a check to when you were at the university in Philadelphia. And he goes, oh, my ex-wife, that bitch. I'm sure she just cashed it, and wow. No, and he said, and I had kept some of his artwork, and I was really ashamed of it.
Right.
And he said, no, please keep it. And one of the pieces is in the Smithsonian, so it's like a really serious piece of art. And he said, no, consider it a gift. I'm really proud of how you changed your life. It's like, wow. Well, and all that weight, that weight that you carry
goes
around with
away.
you, that
Exactly.
shame, all went away.
All right, Buddy, thanks.
You bet.
Good job tonight. Again, Buddy Totten, our social media director and CEO and janitor and cook and chef. But, I mean, to get rid of that, making amends and when they accept them, good for you. And it's also, I find making amends to be self-centered in a good way because it makes you feel as good as the other guy does.
Well,
That
it's
you're coming- that
necessary.
you're telling the
Otherwise,
truth.
you sit with these little welts of emotional trauma that sit in your body and wait, and they just wait. You're fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine until the day comes you're not fine. All of a sudden, you're emotionally weak, and it goes.
Yeah.
How you doing? You doing okay?
Andrew,
Not
talk
so
us-
good today.
Yeah, I mean, Freud talks about the economy of the mind, and I know most people don't like to hear a quote from Freud, but he actually gave us the general construct that even non-Freudians still sort of use to talk about how the brain works. And one of his concepts is the economy of the mind, which basically says that consciously you're only able to really deal with 7 things or think about 7 things, even though there might be like 10 really bad things happening in your life. So your mind actually prioritizes the worst, like the less worse on each under one, to give you only as much as you can deal with. And sometimes if things are too much to deal with, it blocks it completely. And it doesn't let you, you're in complete denial, you don't know it, it buries it in your subconscious until you're ready to deal with it. And one of the parts and processes of getting sober is that it's not It's not like you just go to rehab and in 30 days you're going to figure out everything you've done wrong to everybody and then be able to fix it by having a conversation with them. Right. It's a process of several years while you're getting sober, figuring out all the missing pieces that you don't remember and remembering what you've done, and then noting as you improve, as you develop, as your emotional and physical and spiritual ability to function comes back, then all of a sudden you're actually able to deal with these issues and deal with the problems that have been holding you back. And some of them are the ones that drove you to use or kept you to continue using. And if you don't address them, then they become what we call triggers. And that will bring up the feelings that you'll then easily slip back into relapsing without even maybe knowing it sometimes. You'll just subconsciously get triggered into doing something. And next thing you know, you're getting high or you're drinking again when you didn't really intend to.
Well, there are secrets and resentments, and like we were talking about making amends. Every time I think of such and such's name, I wince a little bit, or I cross the street, or I don't want to confront them. I don't want to see them at a party. You carry this stuff around with you, and until it's dealt with, and then you go, I'm free, and I don't have that shame. I don't have that guilt. I don't have that problem that I live with.
You know, I didn't get to that part. Shadoe Stevens is our guest. I'm Pat O'Brien, Andrew Spanswick. We're all here. I didn't, it's called a reset in the radio. I didn't get to that part until I took the St. Francis of Assisi prayer for real about forgiving yourself first. Mm-hmm. And it took me a while to look at myself and forgive myself for being such a, can we say ass on the show?
That's a donkey.
Okay. Mm-hmm. For being such a moron. Mm. Did you have that experience too? That I had to say, Pat, I'm sorry you did this to everybody.
You know what happened to me in rehab in the second week? And my roommate and I, who became one of my best friends, we were voted least likely to succeed because we had a lot of opinions about mere alcoholics. You know, we were the epitome of the mentally ill. We were drug addicts, thank you. And they didn't talk about drugs. They talked about alcohol a little bit, but they were always talking about steps and meetings and stuff. I didn't understand. So we had a lot of opinions. So the guy comes to us and he says, you know, this is your only hope. It's the only thing that's ever worked for anybody. And it doesn't work for everybody because you got to want it. So you better know what you want before you dismiss it. So you might try listening. And he turns to me and he says, you've got a lot of anger issues. If I were you, I would get a sense of humor. If you don't have a sense of humor about who you are, what you've done, and where you're going, you're in for a rough ride because life gets really tricky. And it was like simultaneous, get a sense of humor, bing, meditate, get deeply rooted in a spiritual program. And that happened on that moment that day, and that was 30 years ago.
They just said to me, you're going to die. Same thing.
Yeah.
Andrew, how do you do that, the clean centers, and which are great, by the way? How many have I been to? 3 now, right? 2 or 3?
Yeah, we visited 3 together. Yeah.
But how do you figure out what a person like, let's say Shadoe, that come into, you're our counselor, and we're both wise asses, and we know everything,
retire.
We're famous. No, but I mean, but one size doesn't fit all. You can't just, so how do you deal with that in a rehab?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that happens is that, whoever comes into rehab has to feel safe. And when someone's detoxing, that's a very difficult place to get to. So generally, the process is people come in, they're medically evaluated, and then we'll detox them from whatever drugs they're on. Unless we do a maintenance program with somebody that's on opiates and they have to come off them for a long period of time. And we call that titrating down off of medication for a period of time. Then once they...
Wait, what's it called?
Titrating. It's when you start with the full dose you're on and then slowly take a little less and a little less and a little less. The medical term's titrating. Titrating off of medication. So then the next thing that we have to deal with then is once we sort of what we call baseline decline, and we know what they're like without the drugs that they've been using to sort of cover up all their issues and problems, then we know whether there's an underlying mental health issue, whether there might be deep depression, anxiety, trauma, grieving, or something more serious like a mood disorder or even a thought disorder sometimes. And all of those can be caused by the drugs. For example, a lot of people that have been using crystal meth often have drug-induced psychosis, that paranoia you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that doesn't go away just because you stop taking the drug. So sometimes we have to medicate people through the process of getting past that paranoia as their brain starts to heal and reform. So there's a medical component that really needs to be taken into account. And then on top of that, then there's a therapeutic process where you're working with the patient and you're guiding them through this process of what's going on medically, but also what that means to them in terms of themselves and their mind and who they are and all of that. And then on top of that, we have to rejoin and re-enter people into society. And that's where 12-step programs and things like that come in really helpful, because there's a fellowship of people out there that have had the same problem.
You know, I want to just say this is KLEANradio.com, but you bring up an important point, and I think one of the reasons, I don't want to scare people away. This all sounds very scary when you say fear and shame and paranoia and parents and relatives and you're going to die, you're going to live, you're going to it's all very scary, but I found that I really got it when I discovered that the greatest thing about recovery is that there are milestones. I think it was
There definitely are. I mean,
Maslow or somebody said that people react better when they know there's a milestone. That's why they say one day at a time. Mm-hmm. That's why you say, well, that's why you get chips. You have 30, you have 90, and I think there's a reward in recovery. Let's give some people some. Let's not scare the hell out of them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things that happens, I think, when people get through detox is, and I get this reported almost from every patient, is that one morning they get up and they look in the mirror and they recognize themselves for the first time in a long time. And they've been used to looking at something different or taking something like cocaine so they could feel different about who they were looking at in the mirror. And all of a sudden they've been sober for a while, and all of a sudden they see the real them again, and it's the them they saw before they started using drugs. And all of a sudden there's all these lights go off that, oh my gosh, I just wasted a whole bunch of years. Mm-hmm. And what am I going to do to get them back?
Yeah, I don't want to go back there, right. No matter what. Yeah, that happened for me. I made major changes in my first year and lost 50 pounds because I didn't stop eating either, as I used massive amounts of everything.
Well, alcohol too, sugar, so you have to rebalance your blood sugar level, and most people can only do it by eating junk food.
Well, see, I lost 40 pounds off this body. I just didn't eat. And I was working in New York. I was doing, what was that stupid show? The Insider. Yeah. Back when I got ratings. Go ahead, Shadoe.
Wasn't so stupid then.
I can see it now.
No, I mean, everything changed, and I knew I had chaotic energy, so I took up martial arts, and that disciplined me and gave me a focus and made me feel better about myself. And then I was running and doing martial arts, and then I took up yoga, and then I was like, all of these things are empowering me and making me feel better about me, and I changed physically, and my whole world changed. In my first year, I met my wife at 9 months sober, and she moved in with me 6 months later, and we got married 6 months later, and then we had our daughter Amber in the first year. Yeah. My life is so extraordinary, what happened over the course of all these years. I mean, my daughter Amber was in 22 Jump Street this summer, just got married a month ago. She looks like Beyonce. She's just ridiculously beautiful and talented. My other daughter she's in the beauty industry going to school. She's like stunning and breathtaking. And I'm still with my wife. Crazy about her 28 years later.
Good for you.
Like crazy.
And a lot of that, though, is not that you get these gifts they say these promises of things will come to you. It's that you're there to be able to have them come to you.
Be present, yeah.
You can be present, and you can respond, and you can work through problems, and so you keep things.
Well, you're not just
discarding things as you. Drugs are not your primary focus anymore. So while you would make all these compromises to make sure you could use, all of a sudden you're not making compromises, and you actually have this ability to interact and give something back in real time that's meaningful.
Go on our website, which is KLEANradio.com, and you can find out that Shadoe is still creative. I don't mean to say it that way, but just doing everything. You're almost manic. You got an art show in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
At the... what's it called?
Gallery Michael.
Gallery Michael on Rodeo and Wilshire.
We had a
your stuff's next to Dali, right?
Yes, Salvador Dali and Picasso and me. I was going, how did this happen? And they it was so successful. They continued to represent me, and I'm doing a signature piece on Marilyn Monroe for them for their Academy Awards VIP party.
Oh, nice!
This year. So that's really, and you can see that at Shadoe Art, SHADOE. art.com.
We put it on ours too, but I go to Shadoe Art, SHADOE.
And the artwork, by the way, is very much like the program. It's called the transdimensional symbolism of rocky waters, and rocky waters is a metaphor for difficult times. And in the first piece, It's and I write my own descriptions of everything too. And the first piece, it says, just when he thought he was winning the game, fate took a turn down a blind alley. And suddenly he was forced to face the unknown, doubt, fear, and how to become a ventriloquist dummy for the voice of the Almighty. And then it is the chronicle of the stages of fear and doubt until he ultimately surrenders and gives up and gets it all.
Well, that's beautiful.
Nothing is everything.
It's like the John Lennon painting. He finally saw the molehill, and it was like this big as a thimble. Jamie is on the line from Vancouver. Jamie, you got a problem tonight? You're feeling weepy, it says.
Actually, this is Amy from Vancouver, Washington.
That's all right. I'm
hey,
sorry.
Amy, how are you doing?
Hi.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Amy.
I'm just having a moment. Today's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
And I left an abusive relationship 4 years ago next week on the 25th. And I still have, I guess I'm kind of in where I get triggered by the moment of the decision of leaving the abuse.
And it's been 4 years?
Yeah, Jamie, it's clear.
Amy.
I'm sorry, Amy. I'm looking at the
That's my fault.
thing.
Yeah,
anyway, but Amy, and I know Amy, so I don't know why I'm not getting the name right. But anyway, Amy, the fact that it's your birthday is a lot of what this has to do with, because everybody, when they have their birthday, they have a set of expectations for what that birthday is supposed to represent. And people actually tend to self-judge themselves a lot on their birthday. And then when they judge themselves and then they feel that they haven't met their expectations or that they failed somehow, then that becomes the overwhelming thing they think about, and they lose perspective of to how far they've actually come. Because, Amy, I've spoken to you a few times on the radio, and I know you've made incredible strides in the last year alone, right? So, the fact that you're feeling these feelings again and that they're very real and that they're really tough to feel, you should really now start thinking about, okay, it's my birthday and I'm triggered by all this stuff. But the reality is, let's look back at the year at all the positive things that have been happening. Start trying to rejoice over some of those.
Right.
Amy, we got to go. Happy birthday. You know how to find us, okay? There's Amy up there in Washington. You should be celebrating a Seahawks thing, but that's what happens. And you're exactly right. You expect things on these big milestones, right?
Yeah, and once activated, once that first negative thought is activated, it becomes hyper-vigilant, and it goes, what else is wrong?
Well, how do you get rid of those?
I think the best way, there's things called stopping behavior. It's actually a cognitive behavioral technique. And basically, if something comes up that is you can't really change, and it's a negative feeling or a negative experience, and you can't deal with it, then there's no one to talk to it about, there's no way to work through it. The best thing to do is just say, you know what, stop, I'm not going to listen to my head about that. I'm going to think about something else, and redirect yourself, and just keep doing that until you get onto something else. And then you'll feel different eventually, and you'll be able to control what you choose to think about to some extent. But you have to remember to then go back and deal with that issue at an appropriate time with an appropriate person that can help you with the issue.
Right.
Well, there's also
how many hours, how many days and hours of your life, did you waste worrying about what was going to happen?
I literally found, and I've had really 10,000 really good reasons to use and drink again during 30 years. And two things. One I realized is that it always gets worse, and I've never heard one good story of someone who, stopped using and would say, I was around the 12-step programs, and I learned how to do it, and that's enough. It was the worst time of my life. I've never heard that story. But for me, it was, I found that writing helped, because the clouds get in the way when I'm just trying to think my way into, if I start writing, here it is, here's the date, here's what I'm feeling right now, here's what's going on in my mind, and it starts to organize it.
Yeah, it organizes it. What happens is that if you're depressed or if you're feeling bad about things, one of the ways the brain tries to make you solve the problems by what they call ruminating, where you think of the same thing over and over and over again.
And it makes lists.
Yeah, and you can't stop ruminating over all this stuff. But by writing it down, you're compartmentalizing it into a spot, and then you can set priorities of how to deal with things. And then when you start to ruminate about something, you're like, oh no, that's number one. I've already got that. I got a plan for that.
Yeah,
and it stops that process.
And most of those things, Joe Walsh always says he wakes up in the morning and writes a script. how the day's going to go, and then he tries to write the ending. And that's what we all do. You know, I mean, we before we go here, I know you're doing great. You got all kinds of things going on. What would you say to people out there? Because you're such, as I said earlier, a beacon of recovery, and man, you look great. You are great, and I just love you. But I like your opinions on these things. So you can fire away.
I would say that if you have a problem, get help. There are different than when I got sober. It was a lot more mysterious and a lot more shameful. Today, there's so much information about why it works, how it works, where you can get help. You've got the internet. You can look up things. You can find out about how step work works. You can find out where meetings are everywhere, and just go and be with people who are trying to do what you're doing, like get better. And you start hearing the steps that you can take that will change your life, even if you don't believe it. All you have to do is kind of show up and be willing.
And they're called steps for a reason, because you step forward, not backward.
And if you've been around a long time and you're going through a difficult time, you don't give up, because you just never know how good life might get.
Shadoe, thanks for joining. Back when you were using, I loaned you $1,000 to start up your art career.
Yeah, I've got that. There's a check in the car.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Shadoe Stevens, I love you, man. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks a lot, man. It's good to meet you.
There he is. Andrew, put a cap on the night for us. I mean, I think there's just so much going on in recovery that you just got to do one thing at a time, right?
Yeah, and I think there's just so much information that people still need to know. And I know that people that are out there, they're using and desperate. It all seems overwhelming. But it really does start with just admitting there's a problem, and then reaching out and trying to find ways to get help. And like Shadoe said, there's plenty of ways to do that. And if we can't help people directly, we have people we refer people to. So
888-601-6040. Reminder: there's 2 days you shouldn't worry about. One of them's yesterday, can't get that one back. And the other one is tomorrow, till the sun rises. Ain't gonna happen. And it could rise in a cloud or in clear daylight, but it's not gonna happen. So you be present. Stay in the moment. Stay in the moment for us. Shadoe Stevens, we thank you. Andrew, I'll see you next week.
Great.
For all out there, be careful. We'll see you.
Thanks, Shadoe.
The magnificent 790 KABC.
Are you addicted to drugs or alcohol but unable to commit to an inpatient rehab stay? Introducing KLEAN Treatment Center's Outpatient Treatment. This drug and alcohol treatment program is designed specifically for the working professional. Don't let your commitments of running a business, taking care of a child, or maintaining your college classes get in the way of your recovery from addiction. With daytime, evening, or individualized programs, KLEAN's Outpatient Treatment will fit your life. Call now for a free screening. Professional guidance is standing by.